Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host, Bill DeFilippo, joined today by my co-host, Matt Filipovitz. Matt, what's going on?
Bill, I spent the weekend in Michigan near New Buffalo. And I feel like many Penn State fans, I grew up, Bill. Have you ever seen the commercials, like the Pure Michigan commercials that
Yeah,
encourage
yeah,
Michigan tourism? Growing
yeah.
up in Pennsylvania, I always thought to myself, why would anyone go? Like, what's the appeal of a vacation in Michigan? And I have to eat some crow. I had an absolute blast in New Buffalo. It's only like an hour and 15 from Chicago. And I spent so much time splashing around in Lake Michigan. I had great food and great beer everywhere I went. So, not to start this Penn State podcast off by singing the praises of the state of Michigan, but I'm feeling pretty good. That was a very fun trip. And now here we are, Bill. Like fewer than, there we go, College of Com, 50 days from kickoff. So, a lot of things coming up in my corner right now.
I'm going to be honest. I didn't know there was a New Buffalo, Michigan. I'm now looking at a map of Michigan and that is practically Indiana. My goodness.
Yes, it is extremely close to the Indiana border. It is also like really like the very tip of Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time, I guess, right now.
Okay.
And the sun was out until like 9:15. It was really nice considering Chicago's like pretty much the start of Central Time. It was very nice. We got almost like an extra 45, it might have been 48 at the dot minutes of sunlight, and that went a long way for me enjoying my weekend. So I'm doing good.
Is that a place you drive to, or is there like a ferry that takes you out there?
You could train it. There is a metro that takes
Okay.
you over that way. But we opted to drive. It was like an hour 15. It's not too far.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was great.
Very nice. Well,
What's doing with you, my friend?
Nothing. The World Cup is over, so I don't know what to do with myself now. Like
Yeah.
I just have all this time that I now have to figure out how to fill because I just can't watch 4 hours worth of soccer games every day now, and it sucks.
Preseason football's coming
awful.
up, Bill. The Panthers are playing in the
gracious.
Hall of Fame game, and there are a shocking amount of former Penn State players who now play in Carolina. So you can watch Dan Chisena play in like 2 weeks. So I hope you're excited for that.
That is the Panthers and the Cardinals. Jesus Christ, that is Matt Campbell's old stomping grounds, the Canton, Ohio general area. So
That's right.
that is football country like you wouldn't believe, baby. One of these days I will actually make it over to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I went when I was like 8 years old, so I don't remember anything about it, but it would be nice to go and just, I don't know, like get a picture next to a bust of Mike Ditka's head or something like that. I don't know what exactly
it's
would
fine.
Do it. Yeah.
The Baseball Hall of Fame is way better.
Oh, the Baseball Hall of Fame. That and Cooperstown just in general are like the best. But we will wrap up the beginning of the podcast banter because Matt has to go see the Odyssey. And
I'm
also
excited.
because
I've seen it. Not in IMAX, though, in XL at AMC. As an AMC, of course, not a sponsor, but they could be. Bill, I am very proudly not A-list, but I'm AMC. Is it Premier? The one that earns you points 5 times faster on snacks. So I have $10 in snack credits to use tonight. I'm very excited about it.
I went to see Jackass 5 last week, and that was the first time. That was the first time I had been in a movie theater since I want to say it was sometime in like 2021 because they re-released Schindler's List, and I was like, I've never seen Schindler's List, and everyone says it's a very good movie, so I will go and see it. But yeah, like I don't go to the movies ever, so it really took something really special for me to go, and that was Jackass 5. But yeah, let's get into this position preview. We're done talking about Penn State and the offensive side of the football. We are now moving to the defensive side of the football, and we're starting right away with what might be, to me, Matt, the most interesting group on Penn State's defense. That'll be the defensive line. It's a group that is very, very different than it was last year. Under James Franklin, there was a lot. I should have done this before, but I'm going to go through right quick. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys between their defensive tackles and defensive ends who transferred in addition to a couple of recruits they were able to get along, in the trenches. A lot of new faces, including two new a new way of even coaching the defensive line between Ika Molo and Christian Smith as the defensive line and edge rusher coaches. It's very, very different, Matt. And I think this is very interesting because it's just so overhauled in seemingly every way from what James Franklin wanted Penn State to be in the trenches, particularly from the Manny Diaz era of just total havoc and total chaos on. That I have no clue what to expect out of this group.
You said it's the most interesting group we've done so far, Bill. I thought this was the hardest group to prepare for because Penn State fans, and us included, really don't know a lot about anybody in this room who's performed. Like, honestly, Bill, the most known commodity here is probably Ivan Kemaju. Maybe you can say it's Max Granville, but he's been on the shelf for the last 18 months, so who even knows what he's going to look like to start? This is an incredibly fascinating group, and I'll be honest, Bill, this is maybe a little bit more unexpected. Like, no matter what happened with James Franklin last year, we knew the Penn State offensive line was going to be totally revamped. None of us could have seen this coming between the Franklin firing, Deion Barnes ending up getting, hired away from South Carolina. This is an unexpected revamped room. And to their credit, Bill, if listeners remember back to our player retention draft, Bill, I took Xavier Gilliam, Penn State defensive tackle, who will be part of who he play for in a couple of minutes here, as my first pick, because I didn't think Penn State would be able to land large body defensive tackles in the portal. And to Penn State's credit, they landed a lot of those guys, and we'll talk about them here in a little bit. But you're right, Bill. It is a fundamental shift. They are big. They are beefy. They want to clog A gap. They want to clog B gap. And I'm excited to see what that looks like with the linebacking core we'll talk about next week that can fly around at the second level and make some plays. So I think we're going to see a pretty fundamental change in how we see Penn State play defense. I loved the Manny system. I think that's forever going to be my bar. I wasn't very fond of the Tom Allen system. I thought the Jim Knowles system was fine. I think what Denton Lynn can do, I'm maybe more comfortable watching the Penn State defense play. And I think more than anything else, Bill, just how much unknowns there are, I'm pretty pumped to see what this group looks like when toe hits leather in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'd agree. And just to kind of hammer home something that you and I both hit on, I'm looking at Penn State's depth chart from 2025 along the defensive line. Zariah Fisher's gone. Jalen Harvey's gone. And some of these guys were always going to be gone. Example, Alonzo Ford is gone. Xavier Gilliam is gone. Owen Wafel is gone. Zane Durant is gone. Anai White is gone. Randy Adrika is gone. Denai Dennis Sutton is gone. Chaz Coleman is gone. Malachi Williams is gone. There was so much churn, just straight roster churn that happened as a result of James Franklin getting fired, of Jim Knowles going to Tennessee, of Deion Barnes going to South Carolina, that this was, I'm sure if we actually went through and looked at, other than maybe quarterback, just because quarterback is always going to be such an outlier in college football in 2026 with the transfer portal and everything and response firing, I would bet there is no unit on Penn State's team that had more churn in terms of guys going out and guys coming in than Penn State's defensive line room. And there are huge bodies all over the place, which is what I find so fascinating about this defensive line room, because Penn State's defensive line in the past, not to say they were tiny guys or anything like that, but I think you just look at defensive tackles, a really good example of this. In 2025, Penn State had one guy at defensive tackle who was over 305 pounds, and that was Caleb Artis. Not exactly a guy that you expect to contribute a ton. One guy over 305 pounds. And, that's a very arbitrary cutoff. Alonzo Ford was 300. Xavier Gilliam was 300. DeAndre Cook was 300. Randy Adrika was 308. So, but non-factor last year. This year, you go through their defensive tackle room. It's four dudes who are above that 305 pound mark. Armstrong and Doem is 310 pounds. Siale Tupaki is 326 pounds. Dallas Vakalahi is 326 pounds as well. And Keanu Williams is 317 pounds. It is a defensive line. I think so much of James Franklin's defense, or the idea of what he wanted for defense, was we got to be able to get to the quarterback. We got to be able to force turnovers. We got to be able to play fast. Those, I think, were kind of very general principles for what he wanted his defense to do. I think if you just look at the composition of the guys they got at defensive tackle and, some of the dudes they have at defensive end, Alexander McPherson at 6'6", 254 pounds, and the dude is just a load. If you look at Ikenna Ziagu, the Iowa State transfer, 6'5", 273 pounds. Even a guy like Jackson Ford is 6'5", 264 pounds. There's a beef at defensive end as well. So much of the defense seems like is built, Matt, around the idea of we need to stop teams from running the football. And the defensive line, I think more than anywhere else on the defense, is built with the idea of like, you are just not going to be able to run the football on us if we have our way.
And one thing I do want to call out here, and this is just a point I've been thinking about a little bit since we started this podcast, just thinking through when you made the comment, Bill, about this shift from body type. And I was thinking back to the smaller guys that Penn State have had in its defensive tackle room. And admittedly, at the start, a guy like Anthony Zettel, maybe a little bit out of necessity to be that size. But Franklin clearly liked having a guy like that throughout basically his entire tenure. Kevin Givens, Zane Durant. I already mentioned Zettel. That was a position that Penn State loved to have on the field. And they never really, even last year, Bill, to your credit, they never had that 315-pound hulking defensive tackle next to him. And this year, you rattled off 4 guys, not to give away the game a little bit here. I think those 4 guys, Bill, are probably your first 4 defensive tackles off the bench. And your starters as well. And that's a poor way to word that. I apologize. But I do like that this is a fundamental shift as Penn State goes into a season where they don't play Indiana. They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Oregon. They're not going to play these teams that are going to spread them out and make them defend, all whatever 53 1/3 length of the football field. They're going to bulk up. They're going to stop the run. And I think that can really behoove them in Big Ten football late in the game. And I think that's a fundamental shift that has probably been a little bit overdue. And again, I just want to make sure I keep on calling this out because I have to give this staff a lot of credit. All 4 of those guys are transfers. All 4 of those guys are upperclassmen to one extent or the other. Like none of those guys are freshmen who haven't really shown anything on the field just yet. But in the case of Williams especially, these are guys who have been around the block for an incredibly long time. Shoot, not even Williams. Tuapaki's been around. I think it's his 6th season as well. Like these are grown men that Penn State's going to trot out there, and that is going to be of benefit to them throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, while you were talking, I was going through and trying to get like the heights and weights of some of the really influential guys that Penn State had playing defensive tackle over the last few years. I didn't get all the way that far back, but Zane Durant, 6'1", 287 pounds. Keziah Izzard, 6'3", 305 pounds. Devon J. Thomas, 6'1", 305 pounds. Hakeem Beamon, 6'3", 296 pounds. If you just look at the guys that we flagged, Matt, as the really big dudes, Keanu Williams, 6'5", 317. Dallas Vakalahi, 6'2", 326 pounds. Siale Taupaki, 6'2", 326 pounds. Those guys are all, those last 2 guys are beefier, and Williams is bigger than PJ Mustafa was at 6'4", 318 pounds. And with how James Franklin built his defensive line, where he wanted his defensive tackles to be guys who really got into the backfield and created havoc, PJ looked like the biggest dude on the planet because you put him next to these guys who were 6'1" and about 300 or so pounds. He's going to stick out. He would be a great guy in this room because he would be a great guy in any room, but he would look like everybody else that they are trying to build around this room. And I actually thought back to last offseason, Matt, where I'm glad you mentioned that they got a bunch of transfers in here between Williams, Vakahali, Taupaki, Ndoim, and Elijah Carnell, who we haven't mentioned yet.
Mm-hmm.
Last offseason, one of the big things that Penn State had to deal with is it's really hard to get big bodies at defensive tackle in because they are in such high demand. And I don't know if, with a guy like Carnell that they got an Iowa State discount, with a guy like Ndoim, if they got a you haven't really broken out yet discount with those three dudes they got from UCLA, Utah, and UCLA, if there just wasn't a huge market for them.
A Denton Lynn discount for the UCLA guys way back when.
There's that
possibility. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they got discounts on that or if they were just willing to spend big to fix this. If it's that second thing, they are very much signaling this is going to be a major priority for us in this first season. And, you mentioned the schedule, Matt, which is a really good thing to mention here, because it's other than USC, it's not like they play any Big Ten teams that are, maybe Washington.
Washington would be the exception there. Maybe Maryland, but who knows what that looks like in November.
And Maryland, it's Maryland. I'll worry about them when I have to. It's not like they're playing these high-powered passing offenses that are going to be rolling in with NFL quarterbacks and NFL wide receivers and NFL passing games and all that. They're playing a bunch of teams in Wisconsin, in Northwestern, in Michigan, kind of Purdue, Minnesota, Rutgers, even if they have KJ Duff, who every Penn State fan believes is the best wide receiver on the planet for good reason. Like, they're playing teams that are going to want to run the football, and they built a defensive line designed around, we need to be able to stop teams from running the football. And I don't know what that's going to look like. This very much lends itself to we're going to be a very bend but don't break defense. But I'm really interested to see how this ends up turning out, because it is so radically different from what we've seen in recent years.
I would be upset though if the fundamental thing was bend don't break, because I didn't love that. And maybe part of that was I got spoiled from the Manny Diaz stuff where it was attack, get 3 turnovers a game. I want to see if having these big body defensive tackles necessarily means you have to do the bend don't break thing, because that is not. I know Pry did it for a long time and was very good at it. I would hope it's kind of a hybrid of what we had under Pry, where a little bit bigger defensive tackles, and then what you have from the Manny years. Not to be looking back on, what was 3 years ago at this point and 3 defensive coordinators ago, but I wouldn't be so thrilled with that. But again, we won't know what that looks like until we see, the first 4 trot out there against Marshall in a couple weeks. Starters.
Yeah. So I was going to say, let's start there with the start. And I will say, we have spent basically this entire conversation talking about defensive tackles. We haven't really discussed the defensive ends. The first 2 up, if I had to guess at defensive tackle, are going to be Siali Taupaki and Dallas Vakahali. No, we'll go with Siali Taupaki and Keanu Williams. I think Williams, and just his size, his experience. That's a redshirt senior and a redshirt senior plus as your first 2 guys. They're teammates from
not even real quick though, not even redshirt senior and redshirt senior plus. That's a 7th and 6th year. If we're going that route, Keanu Williams is a 6th year, and then Siali Taupaki is a 7th year. Those are grown men. I think those are the first 2 as well.
Yeah, and then defensive tackle or defensive end. I think Ekene Ezogu from Iowa State, who is the one Iowa State guy who. The one Iowa State guy they brought over at defensive end. And then I think on the other side of it, if I had to guess, it's Ivan Kamoju. I think it's very interesting how the one guy that we are unsure of is the one guy that we have actually seen play at Penn State. Not counting when those previous 2 guys played against them with UCLA. But I just don't know. And this kind of gets to my big concern with all this, Matt. As I read those out, and I say this as someone who thinks Avon is going to be a really, really good player, and someone who is trusting in the fact that they've had McKenna at Iowa State. I don't know how they get to the quarterback yet. And I think if they are going to get to the quarterback, a really big reason why is because Avon Kamoju takes a really big step forward after a promising freshman year.
I mean, not to give away the game from our Penn State over under podcast we'll do later this summer. This team ain't hitting 40 sacks, dude. Like there's no way with the way this roster is currently constructed. It's interesting though that you view Ivan Kemaju as more of an unknown than Azogu. I'm not saying that Azogu has played obviously more football, but that's a guy you're asking to come in his fourth year of college football already, Bill. In his career, Bill, 13 starts, 60 total tackles, 3 total sacks. Let's go to Kemaju in the meantime.
I
just the one season.
I will say unknown in that, like, I don't know who gets that starting spot, whether it's him, whether it's Max Granville, whether it is Alexander McPherson. I just don't know who starts there.
Right.
I would guess those first 3 guys are you could pretty confidently say they are going to be starting.
Okay, that's beyond fair then. But I mean, if there is a guy, Bill, that I think is going to be able to be the guy to lead Penn State in sacks off that edge rusher room, and historically speaking, that's where Penn State sack leader comes from, it's probably going to have to be Kemaju. I thought he played really well. He probably got outshined a little bit by how good Chaz Coleman was, but Kemaju really was steady Eddie for a lot of the season. And for him to break through as a true freshman in a season, Bill, which featured Denai Dennis Sutton and Zariah Fisher, 2 upperclassmen, for them to not only burn at the time 1 red shirt, but a 2nd red shirt of a guy kind of says a lot. And it kind of tells me a lot that Terry Smith and company, who remained at Penn State after the Franklin firing, made it a point to make sure Ivan Kemaju stuck around in Happy Valley because it's a Baltimore kid. Like very easily to see the scenario where he could follow Franklin to Virginia Tech or follow Barnes down to South Carolina. So keeping him kind of tells me they view him as maybe the potential alpha of that group. I say all this again to say, Bill, it's probably going to be tough, at least to start, to feel confident these guys are going to be able to get after the quarterback consistently. Again, maybe they get some confidence in there. Maybe Max Granville proves, hey, I'm 100% healed from that ACL injury. I'm ready to go. You played me in the playoff as a true freshman who enrolled early. Like, I can be that guy for you. But until we see it, I mean, these 3 guys, Bill, and the McPherson kid as well, are what you have to build around. And it is concerning and also a rarity for Penn State fans that none of these guys are really proven commodities or that we've seen them play a significant role on a good Penn State defense ever. So just a really weird spot.
And one thing I did want to mention is that last year, Penn State sacked quarterbacks on 7.63% of dropbacks. That was 25th nationally. Iowa State sacked quarterbacks on 3.5% of dropbacks, which was 128th nationally.
But 3 down front back then, in fairness.
And I will then say USC sacked quarterbacks on 7.29% of dropbacks nationally, which is 28th nationally. Of course, Danton Lynn coming over from USC. And USC's top 2 sack guys last year, Cameron Crawford with 5.5 sacks, and then Braylon Shelby with 4.5 sacks. Not like they had guys who were, this indomitable pass rusher who is recording 12 and a half sacks and right. Oh wow, you could write down in pen that guy's going to the NFL tomorrow. Crawford was a freshman last year, so he was quite good. But it's a defense that tries to get pressure from a lot of different places. USC got sacks from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 different guys. I forgot Tamir Robinson played for USC. I'm sure that won't come in handy next week.
Good poll, Bill.
So coming from all over the place, it's not necessarily going to be, okay, Penn State needs to build what it does on the defensive side of the football to try and get home with Abdul Carter, with Denai Dennis Sutton, with Carl Nassib or Micah Parsons or
Torgos Matos.
Or Shaka Tony. Like, don't insert name of great Penn State edge rusher here. It's going to look different. This is a way that it's going to look different. What I will say with these four, to go back to what we talked about a moment ago, two really big dudes at defensive tackle. Ivan Kamoju, 6'3", 252 pounds at defensive end. Ikenna Ziagu, 6'5", 273 pounds. They are going to have a ton of size up front. I would not be surprised if they, some of the guys they fold in are also really big dudes, really physical dudes. And I think I think this is a group, Matt, when we look at things from the perspective of floor and ceiling, I think this is a group that probably is a pretty high floor. I don't know if this is a defensive line that's going to get pushed around a ton and be really easy to, you go back to Manny's first game against Michigan where they were just getting pushed around all over the place. They were
oh my God, I forgot about that.
Michigan runs for 300 yards or whatever it was. I don't think we're going to get something like that.
No.
I do think it is fair to question the ceiling of this group and the guy who is going to dictate where that ceiling. There are two guys who I think are going to dictate where that ceiling is, maybe three. Ivan Kamoju is going to be the first guy, I think, who gets a chance at setting where Penn State's ceiling as a defensive line is going to be.
I think that's fair. And I'm glad you mentioned Shaka Toney because this feels like a pretty decent time to kind of talk about the fundamental shift in size amongst these Penn State defensive ends. The days of Shaka Toney, God, Bill, what was Shaka? Probably 6'3", 240, 250. He was not a big dude. Like Sharif Miller before him was not
6'2". Shaka was 6'2", 242 pounds. Sharif Miller was 6'5", 255.
Like those days are done. Like having these long, lanky dudes off the edge. YGM was a little bit bigger than that. Obviously, Micah and Abdul were in and of themselves converted linebackers. Naturally, you're going to have a little bit skinnier size there. Not that those guys are skinny by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a pretty fundamental shift that I think prevents Michigan 2023, 2024, 2023. That would have been 2022, whatever year that was, from happening ever again, because there is that much beef up front. And, let's even factor, let's go further on the depth chart a little bit here, Bill, just to kind of keep things rolling along, because who he play for might take 35 minutes.
And you got to go see the Odyssey.
I got time. But you factor in a guy, Bill, like Liam Andrews, converted defensive tackle who they moved to defensive end. Like there's a lot of value to beefing up a guy like that. Like Penn State kind of did a similar thing. Oh my God, what year would that have been? Where they needed some beef on pass rushing down. So YJM got bumped in. It's not a direct one-to-one comparison, but still it was a way to get a lot of big bodies on the field. I think on the other side of that coin, where you have that on a, obvious pass rush down, you need a 5-man front. Liam Andrews is a guy who has experience playing against guards, against centers, and he'll get reps against tackles now playing along the edge. And a guy I'm incredibly intrigued by, an Armstrong Nwodum, the Oklahoma State transfer. Just a humongous guy. Is he the tallest of this bunch? I want to say he's officially listed at 6'3", and I can't blame a guy for not being good in a Mike Gundy defense. And that seems like a guy who maybe could really benefit from a nice change of scenery and not having all that much put on his plate and playing behind a couple of guys and experienced guys like Williams, Tuapaki. I just really think that there's some really good avenues here for Penn State to run 6 deep. But to your credit, Bill, I think that's a great point. The ceiling for Penn State probably isn't all that much higher than the floor. I think it's going to be a very steady Eddie unit this fall.
And then to get into the reserves, because I think the reserves have, if there are two guys who I think can bring that little something, or have the potential to bring that little something to the defensive line room. One, you mentioned Armstrong Nwodum. I'm just fascinated in this guy because everything that we have read about him is everything that we have heard about him in workouts is like very Jordan Vandenberg-esque, where it's just like
current Chicago Bear,
yes. Where this guy is just like a freak athlete. He's 6'2", 310, strong as hell, athletic, and we'll see what we have in him. And then there's the actual guy who I think could dictate what Penn State's ceiling is among the reserves, and that is Max Granville, who James Franklin's staff was very, very careful with handing out praise to young guys.
Mhm.
And I will never forget when he first got on campus. One, he gets on campus in if I remember correctly, he gets on campus in August as camp starts because that's when he was able to reclassify. So
Correct.
he's a child he's a child who, at the very last minute, is able to get into a college football system on a very good defensive line, and almost immediately was like, we don't know if we're going to be able to keep this kid off the field. This kid's special. And then he tears his knee after playing in 7 games in his in what would have been his true freshman season.
And he tears it
the
after spring
one
ball too,
guy-
Bill. Like, if you remember, it was when
Yeah.
he was, I want to say he was home after spring ball 2025. So he went through the whole spring and did all that process. But that just means that rehab really took everything away from him. It's not like the thing where you tear it late in the year, or you tear it in spring, and maybe you can sneak back for some reps late in the year. Like, this was a straight up full on missed season.
Exactly. So at the very least, by this point, he should be in a good place physically now that he's 16 months off of it or something, but he's going to have to learn a new defense, get up to speed, all of that. As I'm looking at the reserves, those are the 2 guys who I'm like, they can maybe, Inodim is the guy who I think can maybe provide a little bit of electricity from defensive tackle. And then Granville, if he's the guy who can pin his ears back and get to the quarterback, I think that is something, as I look through Penn State's defensive end room, that's something that I think they could really, really, really use. And if he is able to find his form quickly and get back to being a guy who maybe he is a third starter, maybe he is able to become the starter and knock those other 2 guys down a peg as a result of it, I think he can set Penn State's ceiling, or Penn State's defensive line ceiling, just that extra little bit higher, and be a guy who they can kind of build this thing around.
Yeah, I probably misspoke when I said the 2 reserves I'm most intrigued by, because I guess Granville technically does fall into that reserve category if we're going to stick with our, hey, they got 4 starters here. But I view Granville as a starter 4.5, starter 5. I think that's a dude who's going to play maybe even equal snaps as the other 2 guys, because, and this is a rarity, Bill, there is not an edge rusher on this Penn State team who I feel confident you say you can't take that guy off the field. You can probably take any of those 3 guys off the field and replace him with, another one of them, and you're probably going to see fairly similar production or results, at least as things stand, here on July 20th. You want to talk about LeVar? It's a defensive line preview, and it's Penn State. I feel like we kind of.
Here's what I was going to say. As I look through the reserves, here's how I view things. Defensive end, I view the reserves as Granville and McPherson. I would even put Granville a plane above McPherson, just because McPherson is
just 1 year at Colorado.
Yeah.
But did come from IMG, so there is a little bit of hey, he might be a little bit more used to the college game than a lot of other guys might be at this stage of their career. So,
and to say, as a freshman, 16 tackles, half a tackle for loss, half a sack. He did show some stuff, but I will still put him just like that, a little bit below Granville. And then it's just kind of a grab bag of, can Mason Robinson finally stay healthy? What is LeVar able to do? What could Deshaun Burnett or Jackson Ford give you? Are Ford and Elijah Reeder, are they going to be able to play as true freshmen? Just kind of that mystery bag of guys. And then at defensive tackle, it is Armstrong Doem, who is a little bit different from Dallas Vakalahi, just because I think Vakalahi is the guy who is actually going to be in the rotation.
Yeah, Vakalahi is going to play a lot.
Third starter type. Maybe Elijah Carnell is another third starter type, as someone who just has a lot of familiarity with Campbell and his staff. And then again, getting to that grab bag of maybe you get something from Ty Blanding, maybe you get something from Liam Andrews or DeAndre Cook, but who actually knows what you get from the guys in that group at both defensive tackle and defensive end. But if there's one guy who I think just every Penn State fan is going to be rooting for to be able to give them that little extra something, it is LeVar Jr., for the simple reason that he is, one, he's LeVar Arrington's son, very obviously. 2, Penn State Penn State is going to need someone who could pin their ears back and get to the quarterback, and you gotta hope that he might be the guy who is able to give that to them.
And if that's his specialty as a true sophomore, that's more, I guess, sophomore now. There's no more red shirts. But if that's what he does for you right now, I think that's more than fine, considering he's a guy who began his career at linebacker, made the move up to defensive end, and now all of a sudden, in the old system, he probably plays like a good bit. But now where you're trying to get some more beef up there, LeVar Arrington II is still fairly skinny. So it would not shock me if it takes a little bit for him to get up there. Bill, I don't think he's a top 4 guy, but I think between ends and tackles, you probably got 9 guys who can play along your defensive line, and you're probably going to be in a fairly decent spot. And if a guy like DeAndre Cook or Liam Andrews or LeVar Arrington steps up and they can give you 2 or have 2 true double-digit guys that allow you to go multiple fronts, 5-man front, 6-man front, 3-man front, like, I think that's a really healthy place for a college football defense to be, especially coming off of the mass exodus we saw of guys leaving, and in modern college football, where it's easy for a lot of guys to find a system where they can be an every down player, for a lot of these guys to come into Penn State. And a lot of those guys, Bill, didn't necessarily follow Campbell. Like, Nwodim didn't follow him. Williams to Apaki. Like, these are guys who want to play at Penn State for one reason or another. And with that is going to come the understanding that maybe not every single, front we're in is going to suit your abilities the best, but they have enough pieces here, I think, to make some things work.
Yeah, and I really, something I do find promising is that with Ziagu, with, if you want to say Elijah Carnell because he's an Iowa State guy, you can say Elijah Carnell because he's an Iowa State guy. With Taupaki, with Vakalahi, with Williams, they have guys who have been around and can kind of help. I don't know if hold their hand is the right thing, or just give a level of like knowing what you're doing to help ease some of the burden on these younger guys, on a Liam Andrews, on a LeVar Jr., or on even Avon Kamoju or Max Granville, so they don't have to be their very best right away. And I think that's a really valuable thing. And that's something that, like, as we, it's something that's going to be really fun to revisit once we get through the non-conference and we see like what Penn State's snap counts look like after that, because I'm very interested to see like just what happens with a lot of these younger dudes once we start getting into the meat of the season. Of course, we're going to play 2 games here to end the podcast. One, we are going to rank this unit and every other unit among Penn State's defensive units. And then we're going to play who he play for. We will get to who he play for in a second. But Matt, where do you rank the defensive line among Penn State's 4 defensive units of defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety heading into 2026?
Sorry, Bill. I cut out for a second there. I apologize. One thing I do want to call out, Bill, I do not think that you made the comment about looking at snap counts in the non-conference. This isn't going to be a line change situation. I would be shocked if they didn't mix and match who's on the field with who while they kind of sort all this stuff out. Because I feel like the line change has been a pretty consistent feature of like at least the James Franklin and Deion Barnes and those defensive guys thing. It's not going to be line change, I doubt. But Bill, to answer your question, there were 5 options on offense. There's only 4 on defense. Bill, this feels shocking for me to say. I got to put this at 4. I think just with how many unknowns we have, with the relative, oh my God, how do I even word this and not sound like I'm like underestimating what I think can be a pretty talented unit? But I just don't think the playmakers are there, or at least known right now, on the same level I know they have at safety, at cornerback, and at linebacker. So it feels crazy. I got to put this Penn State defensive line room as the 4th best unit on the Penn State defense.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I also have them at 4. And as I'm looking through, I think this group has a high 4. If it doesn't, that wouldn't stun me too terribly much, just because it's so patchwork and new and folding new guys in. And as we talk about ceilings as well, like, I can see a scenario where Zion Tracy, Darius Dixon are going to be, in contention for high-level all Big Ten marks. I could see a scenario where Tony Rojas and maybe one of the Iowa State guys are in contention for high-level All Big Ten marks. I could see a scenario where Marcus Neal and Jamison Patton are competing for All Big Ten marks. There takes a little bit more projecting and squinting and imagining what the future could be for basically everyone on the defensive line. So I think this might have the lowest ceiling of any group on Penn State has the defensive side of the ball. This also might have the lowest ceiling. For that reason, I am also going to be putting them fourth. I'm sure if there were maybe some reinforcements from last year's team that were still here, that might be different, which now leads Matt into where are these guys who were on last year's team?
All right, Bill. Sorry, I keep on cutting out. I will edit all this out later. All right, Bill. Inspired by Inside the NBA's game of the same name, it is time, Bill, for who he played for. Bill, there are 12 former Penn State defensive linemen who now play their college football for a school that is not Penn State. Bill, Chaz Coleman, of course, would have been part of this group, but he is no longer at the University of Tennessee. We wish Chaz nothing but the best with whatever is going on with him.
Ohio
probably.
State.
Eventually, one day.
And
we'll talk about that when we get there.
A caveat. I did have to look up some of these names, not because I was looking for where they went to school, but because that bit at the very beginning about how much turnover there was, I didn't know who was still on Penn State's roster or not. So I had to be like, or I wasn't 100% sure. So I had to be like, ooh, I don't know. Let me double check. Is this guy still here? So I have an idea on where a couple of these guys are. I say that because there's no guarantee I remember this.
We'll start off, Bill, with the hardest one because I feel like FCS guys are always the hardest one for you to know where they ended up. So we'll start off with one that you have no shot of getting. Bill, former Penn State defensive tackle T.A. Cunningham, who he played for.
He's from Florida. Is there an FCS school in like Palm Beach that he went to?
There is not, Bill. I think Sixer legend Bobby Covington went to this school.
Oh, God.
I'm fairly confident Bobby Covington went here. Shout out the Process Sixers as always.
Robert Covington. Did he go to school in Tennessee somewhere?
He did go to school in Tennessee somewhere.
Somewhere in Memphis?
I have no idea. I'm going to guess based upon the name of this school and where Memphis is in Tennessee. It is not that. It is not in Memphis.
Is it like Eastern Tennessee or something like that?
It's East Tennessee State, Bill, is where T.A. Cunningham will play college football in 2026. All right, Bill. Now we'll get into the ones I think you might have a shot of getting, or you may have looked up from the past couple of weeks just in prep for this. We'll start off, a guy in his third school, at one point in time, a very highly rated recruit, Anai White. Bill Anai White, who he played for.
Oh, God damn it. He was one of the ones I looked up. Did he go to Oklahoma?
He did not go to Oklahoma, Bill. I hate to say it.
Where'd he go?
But he's in the state of Oklahoma, Bill. He is at Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State.
He is a cowboy now. I have never been to Stillwater, but I have been to Norman, and I had a great burger when I was in Norman. All right, Bill. I think it's now his 7th season of college football. I believe he is originally from Western Pennsylvania. Bill, Zariah Fisher, who he played for.
Did he go to North Carolina?
He did not go to North Carolina, Bill. That's a great guess. You might be thinking of Smith Vilbert, who was around for forever.
I was thinking of Smith Vilbert.
Bill, Zariah Fisher returns to Penn State this fall.
Marshall.
Not at Marshall, Bill. He will be joining Tamir Robinson as a USC Trojan.
Okay, good for you. After everything Zariah Fisher went through in his Penn State career, I am glad he got paid to go live in California for a year.
Yep, good for him. That's awesome. Guy's been through a lot, and I'm happy he gets to spend out his final college career in a nice warm place in a great conference. Randy Adarica, who he played for.
Again, a guy I know is from Florida. So I will guess Miami.
It is not Miami, Bill. He is following Mr. James Franklin down to Virginia Tech. He will be a Hokie this upcoming fall.
Good for him.
Good for him is right.
Good for him.
All right, Bill. My first pick in the player retention draft, a guy who I was incredibly high on for his play at Penn State.
I was on a rocky top.
Bill, that is correct. Xavier Gilliam did follow Jim Knowles to the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. He will be a volunteer this upcoming season. Bill, let's keep it in the defensive tackle room. A guy who is now on his third school.
Okay.
Brother of a high-profile recruit who got a bag to go to USC. Bill, Owen Wafel, who he played for.
He's one of those guys I had to look up because I wasn't sure if he was still on Penn State's roster or not. He is at Duke.
Bill, that is correct. He is at Duke. He is joining Manny Diaz. And I do not believe Duke plays VT this year, so there will not be a Manny Diaz, Owen Wafel, James Franklin reunion. Bill, I'm going to rattle off 3 guys here just to keep things moving along because you probably can guess who they play for. Bill, Daniel Jennings.
Before you say it, is it Virginia Tech?
It is, Bill. Daniel Jennings, Malachi Williams, and Cortez Harris, who he play for.
Virginia Tech.
All 3 of those guys have followed James Franklin to Virginia Tech. Of that group, Daniel Jennings, if you remember, Bill, a reclassified guy last year, originally from West Virginia, I want to say. So now his career, will now be continuing in the year. It probably should have been starting at Virginia Tech. All right, Bill, we have, by my count, 3 more to go. A guy who transferred 2 years ago, I think from Connecticut as a recruit, Joseph Mapoye, who he played for.
Georgia Tech.
It is not Georgia Tech, Bill. It is in the ACC, though, and he is at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill playing for Bill Belichick. It will be his second season playing for Bill Belichick. Bill, what if I told you Jalen Harvey, who he played for?
He is a Tar Heel.
He is also at UNC, which now makes it 3 former Penn State defensive ends to be playing there because Smith Vilbert played there his final season last year. And Bill, last one, we talked about him earlier, never really broke through at Penn State, but I believe was on field goal block for a long time. Bill, Caleb Artis, who he played for.
Oh, wait, he's another one I had to look up. He went to Temple.
He did go to Temple, Bill. Well done. I am incredibly impressed with how you did. That was a tough one. A lot of guys spread all around, and by spread all around, I mainly mean are in the ACC in some form or fashion. Yep,
that's correct.
100%.
That is correct.
Oh,
well,
that's all I got, Bill.
That was not nearly as bad as I expected it to be. I expected it to be very bad. It wasn't nearly as bad as I expected it to be. Matt, thank you for all of the hard work that went into going, does this guy still play for Penn State? I know that's hard work because, again, I just did it. Any final things you want to say, Matt, before I send the people off to their week?
No, next week is media days here in Chicago, so that's always fun. If you are a member of the esteemed media and you're coming to visit Chicago, I believe no, they're not at the United Center. They're like downtown, I want to say. But if you're staying by the United Center, Kaiser Tiger is a great restaurant, not a sponsor, but they could be over there by the United Center. I want to say, Bill, it's at like a hotel along the river.
The Hilton Chicago.
Yeah, I want to say they're downtown.
I think I've stayed there before.
Downtown's always a great time. Enjoy. Go see the Bean. My 9 to 5 job. The office is right outside the Bean, so that's always cool. Elephant and Castle's a good bar there, I guess. A couple good bars all around there, but enjoy media day if you're a member of the esteemed media and listening. And I'm going back to PA this week, so I'm pretty excited to be back in the Commonwealth. It's been a while since I've been back in Eastern PA, so I'm very excited about that.
Nice. Well, I hope everyone enjoys everything that Big Ten Media Days brings. I hope you, Matt, enjoy Pennsylvania, and I hope all of you enjoyed this latest episode of Roar Lions Roar. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this edition of the podcast. As always, make sure you go and subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice. If it's a podcasting platform that gives you the opportunity to leave us a 5-star review, we'd really appreciate it if you can go and leave us a 5-star review. Make sure you head over to YouTube, subscribe to us over there, hop into the comments, talk with other folks on our YouTube channel about this or anything else that you want, you feel compelled to discuss. Make sure you're following us on both Twitter and Blue Sky. And once again, thank you for listening to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. For my co-host, Matt Filipovitz, I'm Bill DeFilippo. Take care, everyone.
I was trying to think of what like my bit of a tag can be for this. And then I was trying to think, well, like I wonder where John Scott Jr. is coaching nowadays. And then I remembered he left Penn State to coach the Lions. But the Lions were cool at the time, so it wasn't going to be nearly as funny.
Where is he now? Do you know?